Gulf battered, Europe next. Iran eyes attacks on more U.S. allies as tensions threaten to spread beyond the Middle East. Trump's next move could hit these parts of Europe as Tehran weighs new strikes and expands its warnings against U.S. partners. Tehran's new war map revealed. Are American bases and military assets across Europe now coming under Iran's watch? War to spill beyond the Middle East? Iran raises the stakes with medium and long-range missiles capable of reaching farther targets. After months of keeping their distance, could U.S.-European allies now be pulled deeper into the Iran war as regional tensions escalate? Iran is reportedly eyeing military targets in Europe if President Trump escalates the war, according to a report by the Financial Times, raising fears that the conflict could spread far beyond the Middle East. U.S. assets in Bulgaria and Cyprus are reportedly being considered as potential targets by Iran, according to the report, putting American military infrastructure in Europe under renewed scrutiny. U.S. refueling aircraft have reportedly used Bulgaria's Besmer Air Base, making the facility a potential target if Tehran decides to widen its response against American forces. Cyprus has also drawn attention after a British military base on the island was hit by a drone in March, adding to concerns over the vulnerability of Western military facilities in the region. The IRGC has also reportedly examined possible attacks on undersea fiber optic cables around the Strait of Hormuz, raising the possibility of disruption far beyond conventional military targets. If carried out, such plans would represent a major expansion of the conflict, taking the confrontation beyond Iran and the wider Middle East into critical global infrastructure. One source told the Financial Times that Tehran could place no limits on its response to any new U.S. attack, signaling how sharply the stakes could rise if fighting resumes. Iran's attack on a U.S. base in Jordan in July was described as its most accurate strike so far, demonstrating Tehran's growing ability to threaten American positions farther from its borders. The strike killed 3 U.S. service members and highlighted the potential reach of Iranian missiles against targets located well beyond Iran's immediate neighborhood. Some Iranian medium-range missiles could potentially reach parts of southern and southeastern Europe, according to analysts, widening concerns over the geographic reach of Tehran's arsenal. But major questions remain over the accuracy, reliability, and overall size of Iran's longer-range missile stockpile, leaving the true scale of the threat uncertain. A senior IRGC commander has issued a grave warning to Iran's adversaries, signaling that Tehran may be preparing its next move in the conflict. Iran's enemies should anticipate strategic surprises, IRGC official Yadollah Javani warned, hinting at new tactics or weapons that could catch the US and its allies off guard. Javani said Iran is now shifting from a defensive posture to a more offensive one, suggesting Tehran is ready to take the initiative rather than simply respond to attacks. Yadollah Javani said, quote, "The enemy should know that it cannot catch us off guard. Instead, it is the enemy that must anticipate strategic surprises. Whatever is necessary to defend this land, ensure security, and neutralize enemy threats will be executed at the appropriate time." Unquote. The warning comes as US missile stockpiles have reportedly been significantly depleted during the war with Iran, after months of long-range strikes and missile defense operations. That depletion may have limited President Trump's ability to order further major strikes, with US planners facing growing pressure to preserve key weapons for future crises. Dwindling inventories of long-range offensive missiles, including ATACMS and PRSM, have added to concerns that America could struggle to sustain another prolonged campaign. The US has largely fought the war from safe distances through airstrikes and standoff weapons, avoiding a major ground invasion but burning through precision munitions in the process. Iran's missile salvos are putting fresh pressure on the US Patriot stockpile as American defenses face repeated attacks. Tehran is turning the skies into a trap, combining missiles and drones to overwhelm US air defenses. Iran's massive missile salvos are forcing America to burn through Patriot interceptors at an alarming rate. Could Iran force the US to fire dozens of Patriots in a single day, turning the air war into a costly battle? America's air defenses remain under pressure as Iran keeps forcing Patriot systems to fire again and again. Iran's missile production is surging even as US interceptor stocks continue to shrink. Iran had adapted its attack tactics as US interceptor stocks fell, using larger and more complex attack waves to put greater pressure on American air defenses. Iran reportedly used waves of missiles and drones to overwhelm US defenses and force them to expend scarce interceptors at a rapid pace. The attacks targeted 3 US bases in Jordan during 5 intense days of fighting in July 2026, according to the New York Times. The missile salvos forced US forces to fire large numbers of scarce Patriot interceptors, rapidly draining their available defensive stockpiles. On July 17th, one missile penetrated defenses at a US base and killed 3 American soldiers, showing the limits of the defensive shield. More than 100 people were wounded, while other attacks also damaged several aircraft, according to the New York Times. The US fired about 50 Patriot interceptors in a single day, highlighting how quickly Iran's attacks were consuming defensive missiles. Each Patriot interceptor costs about $4 million, adding significant financial pressure as the US races to replenish depleted stocks. The Pentagon used more than 1,500 Patriot interceptors and had fewer than 1,700 left, according to figures cited by the New York Times. The US produced about 600 Patriot interceptors throughout 2025, meaning wartime consumption could quickly outpace replacement rates. Iran combined missile and drone attacks to force US defenses to track and intercept different threats arriving at the same time. Iran effectively used tactics previously seen in Russia's war in Ukraine, combining different weapons to complicate and stretch air defenses. The tactics forced US forces to handle multiple threat types arriving from different directions, increasing the pressure on defensive systems. Iran appeared to have learned from earlier clashes with Israel and the US since the Gaza war, adapting its tactics for future attacks. An IRGC advisor says Iran is shifting from a defensive to an offensive military doctrine, with readiness for cross-border operations now a central goal. Nadi claims Iran is producing more ballistic missiles than it is firing, a statement that Iran International reported but which cannot be independently verified. Nadi says the latest directives to Iranian commanders emphasize hybrid warfare, combining military power with diplomatic, economic, social, and media tools. Mohammad Reza Nadi said, and I quote, "The latest directives to Iranian commanders emphasized hybrid warfare, which is a mix of coordinated use of military, diplomatic, economic, social, and media capabilities. Our production of ballistic missiles exceeds the number being launched. In other words, we are producing more missiles and making them available to our forces than are being fired on the battlefield. We also have a production capacity for drones that exceeds their rate of use and launch, and we have significant production capacity. Production of this equipment will continue, and even if the war lasts for several years, ballistic missiles will still be produced and fired at the enemy on the final day of the war." Unquote. Iranian forces must be ready to carry out operations beyond the country's borders when ordered, Nadi adds, openly defining this as the central feature of an offensive doctrine.
Whenever the situation demands and the order is issued, we must be capable of extending operations into enemy territory and conducting missions far from our own land. These are the characteristics of an offensive doctrine that must be realized. The IRGC is now tasked with achieving this readiness and developing the capability to execute such operations at the appropriate time.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.